She pointed at me like I'd committed a crime, screaming that this lake was hers. The cop stood behind her, arms crossed, watching quietly, while my dog just sat beside me, tail wagging. I didn't even say a word, because she didn't know the truth yet. The lake she was protecting so proudly was actually mine. Hey everyone, welcome back to HOA Stories. I'm Jake. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Atlanta. I bought my dream home here 2 years ago. Big yard, tall pines, and a lake view that feels like peace. But peace doesn't last long when you have a HOA Karen living next door. Before we start, if you really hate HOA bullies, or if you've ever had a neighbor try to control your life, then hit that subscribe button right now. And comment BOOO HOA down below. Trust me, you'll want to stand with me on this one. Because what this woman did next made me question how far people will go for power. So grab a drink and let me tell you how a simple day of fishing turned into a full-blown police scene. It started on a Sunday morning. The kind of morning that feels like freedom. Sunlight bouncing off the lake. Birds fighting over breadcrumbs. And my dog, Max, stretched out on the dock like he owned the place. I had my fishing rod, my cooler, and not a single care in the world. Until I heard her voice. That voice could slice through glass. "Excuse me. You can't fish here." I turned slowly. There she was, a floral dress, oversized sunglasses, and an attitude that could start a war. Her name was Patty. But everyone in the neighborhood called her HOA Karen. I smiled and said calmly, "I live right here, just catching some bass. It's a public lake." She stomped closer, heels clicking against the wood of the dock. "Not anymore," she said. "This lake belongs to our Lakeview HOA, and you're trespassing." I wanted to laugh, but she looked dead serious. I explained, "Ma'am, I don't belong to your HOA. My property isn't part of that community." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, everyone around this lake must join," she snapped. "We voted on it." I shrugged. "Well, I didn't. And neither did the county." She didn't like that answer. Within minutes she pulled out her phone. And I heard those 4 cursed words every sane person dreads. "I'm calling the cops." Max barked once, like he knew things were about to get messy. I didn't argue. I just kept fishing. 10 minutes later, the sound of a police cruiser rolled down the gravel path. I could feel her smug smile before I even looked up. The officer stepped out, calm, older, probably seen this 100 times. "Afternoon, sir," he said. "We got a call about trespassing?" I pointed at my house, just 30 feet behind me. "Officer, that's my property line right there, and the dock's part of it." Patty jumped in before he could respond. "He's lying. That whole section is HOA land. I'm the vice president." The officer looked between us, then took a deep breath, like he was already exhausted. He asked if we had paperwork or boundaries marked. I said, "Yep. I can show you the deed." And that's when the real twist started forming in my mind. Because the property she was so desperate to claim wasn't just next to the lake. It included it. Patty crossed her arms. "You're just trying to make trouble," she hissed. "We pay to maintain this lake." I said, "Funny thing, because I'm the one who pays the property tax on it." The cop raised an eyebrow. Patty blinked like she'd just been slapped by reality. Still, she wouldn't quit. She turned to the cop, begging him to arrest me. "Sir, this man is harassing me, he's not supposed to be here." The cop sighed and said, "Ma'am, he's sitting on his own dock. He's allowed to fish here." Her jaw dropped. It was like someone unplugged her ego right there on the dock. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then she pointed her finger at me and said, "This isn't over. I'll take this to the HOA board." She stormed off, heels clacking like a villain in a bad movie. The officer nodded politely and walked back to his car. As the sound of his engine faded, I sat there watching the ripples on the lake, thinking about how crazy it is that one person can turn peace into chaos just to feel in control. Max leaned against my leg, calm as ever. I tossed another line into the water. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because Patty didn't lose well. She'd come back, with more rules, more threats, and probably more people on her side. And I was ready for it. I just didn't expect what would happen next. When she finally found out who really owned the land she lived on. If your neighbor called the cops over something like this, would you stay calm like me, or let them have a taste of their own medicine? Smirking face. Tell me in the comments below, backhand index pointing down. 3 days passed after the lake incident. And for the first time in a while, I thought maybe Patty had moved on. She didn't. On Thursday afternoon, I came home from work and found an envelope taped to my front door. Stamped with the HOA logo in bold red letters. Notice of violation. I laughed out loud. Because, technically, I wasn't even a member of their HOA. Inside the letter, in the pettiest tone possible, it said, "Unauthorized dock construction, unapproved outdoor pet, and violation of community fishing rules." I swear I could hear Patty's voice through the paper. I walked next door and found her trimming her roses, or maybe just pretending to for dramatic effect. "Hey Patty," I said calmly. "You dropped something on my door." She didn't even look at me. Good. Maybe now you'll take this neighborhood seriously. I smiled, trying not to laugh. I don't take orders from the HOA. I'm not part of it. That got her attention. She turned, sunglasses sliding down her nose like a movie villain reveal. "Oh, you will be," she said. "We're voting to annex your property into the HOA next week. You'll have to comply." I asked, "Annex my property? You can't just vote me into your club." She smirked. "We can if the board agrees. You'll be getting an invite to the meeting. Attendance is mandatory." Mandatory. That word alone made my blood boil. By the weekend, everyone in the neighborhood seemed to know. I couldn't even walk Max without getting side eyes from people holding HOA pamphlets. It was like Patty had built an army overnight. Her army of lawn perfectionists and power-hungry rule lovers. One guy even stopped me near the mailbox and said, "Hey, we all have to follow the same rules, man. Why do you think you're special?" I said, "Because I read my property deed before signing my soul away." He didn't like that. Monday came. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse, fancy glass doors, smell of fresh cookies, fake smiles everywhere. I walked in wearing jeans and a fishing cap. They looked at me like I'd walked into church shirtless. At the head of the table sat Patty, in a bright red blazer, nails sharp enough to cut steel, and a fake smile plastered on her face. "Ah, Mr. Lawson," she said. "Glad you could finally join the community." I pulled up a chair. "Didn't have a choice, remember?" She ignored that and started reading off papers like she was leading Congress. First issue, dock construction. Mr. Lawson's dock violates HOA guidelines. I interrupted. The dock came with my house's patio. Built in 2004. It's older than your rules. A few members whispered, others looked unsure. She glared, still, it needs to match the community aesthetic. I grinned. Maybe the community should match mine. The lake's on my land. That line made the whole room shift. Even the HOA president, an old guy with suspenders and a coffee mug that said Lakeview Pride, looked nervous. Patty, he said softly, do we actually have jurisdiction over his property? Patty's jaw twitched. Of course we do. It's part of the lake perimeter. It falls under shared interest. I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my jacket, my property deed. I thought you might say that. The room went silent as I laid it flat on the table. The boundaries were crystal clear. My land ran 20 feet into the lake. And that meant the entire dock, the shoreline, and yes, part of the water itself, belonged to me. The president leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Well, that changes things. Patty's face turned red. No. That can't be right. He's lying. I handed the document to him. It's straight from the county office. You can verify it. She slammed her folder shut. This meeting is adjourned. And stormed out, heels echoing across the tile floor. The rest of the board sat there in awkward silence. One of them whispered, she's gonna lose it. I smiled. Oh, she already has. The next morning, I woke up to a new sign on my lawn. In bold red paint it read, Private HOA Property, No Trespassing. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. She was doubling down, even after being proven wrong. That's when I realized. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was personal. She couldn't stand that a man she tried to humiliate in front of a cop was the same man who literally owned the land she wanted to rule over. I knew what was coming next. And I was ready. Because Patty was about to make her biggest mistake yet. And it was going to cost her everything. If your neighbor tried to drag you into their HOA like this, would you fight them legally, or play their game until they crash and burn? Smiling face with horns. Let me know what you'd do in the comments, backhand index pointing down. By Tuesday morning, the neighborhood was whispering again. You could feel it in the air, that fake suburban calm. The sound of sprinklers, barking dogs, and gossip behind curtains. Patty had gone full campaign mode. Flyers started appearing in mailboxes. Headlined in bold. Protect our lake, stop the trespasser. Yeah, that trespasser was me. I found one stuffed under my windshield wiper, with a photo of my dock and a note that said, report any illegal fishing activity to the HOA immediately. She had turned my fishing hobby into a neighborhood emergency. I laughed at first. But that laugh didn't last long. Because the next day, I got an email from the county. Someone had filed a complaint about unsafe dock conditions. Guess who signed it? Patty M., Vice President, Lakeview HOA. I swear, this woman must have woken up every morning thinking, how can I ruin Jake's day today? That night, I walked out to my dock with Max. The moonlight hit the lake just right. Peaceful, quiet. Until I saw flashlights on the opposite side of the lake. A few HOA members were out there, taking pictures. They were photographing my property. Probably for their next evidence packet. Max barked once. The lights turned off immediately. I smiled in the dark. Because I had a plan forming in my mind. You see, Patty thought she could win with power. But she didn't know I had something stronger. Patience. And paperwork. 2 days later, I went downtown. Straight to the county property office. The clerk recognized me instantly. "Oh, you're the lake guy," she said with a smirk. "We've had 3 calls from some HOA lady claiming your dock is illegal." I handed her my folder. "Can we make sure my property lines are officially recorded and digitally updated?" She nodded. "Already done. And by the way, your deed actually shows ownership of part of the HOA walking trail." I grinned. Oh, this is about to get fun. That weekend, Patty struck again. I came home to find bright orange cones blocking my driveway. And a printed notice taped to my mailbox. Temporary HOA work zone, access restricted. They were literally trying to close off my own driveway. I pulled over, got out of the truck, and took a slow deep breath. Max barked from the back seat like he was cheering me on. Then I started pulling up cones one by one. Patty came flying out of her house in that same floral dress. "Stop. That's HOA property." I laughed. "Patty, you do realize this entire driveway, this entire side of the street, is on my land, right?" She crossed her arms. "You don't own this neighborhood." I said quietly, "No, just your front yard." Her mouth dropped open. That's when I showed her the updated survey map from the county. I had printed it in color, big, bold, undeniable. It showed that her house, her beloved HOA landmark home, sat partly on a parcel that I owned. Her eyes went wide. You're lying." I handed her the copy. "County doesn't lie. I suggest you get a lawyer." She froze. Completely speechless. By Monday morning, word spread like wildfire. Half the neighborhood now knew that the HOA vice president had been barking at her landlord this whole time. Some people avoided eye contact. Others actually smiled at me for the first time. It was like a silent power shift had just happened. And everyone could feel it. Later that week, I was out on my porch drinking coffee. And saw a black SUV pull up in front of Patty's house. A man in a suit got out, looked like a lawyer. They talked for almost 20 minutes. She was waving her hands like she was fighting for her life. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't have to. I already knew what was happening. Because I'd filed my own paperwork that morning. An official cease and desist notice for HOA harassment. And this time, the county was on my side. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat by the lake again. The same spot where it all started. Fishing rod in one hand, coffee in the other. Max lying next to me. I thought about how strange people can be. How they'll destroy peace just to feel like they're in charge of something. The lake was calm. But behind that calm, I could feel the storm still brewing. Patty wasn't done yet. And honestly, neither was I. Because the next move I made would make sure she never messed with me again. Engagement question for audience. If you caught your HOA neighbor secretly taking pictures of your house at night, would you confront them or set a trap and let karma do the work? Smiling face with horns. Tell me what you'd do in the comments. Backhand index pointing down. A week went by. And Patty hadn't stepped outside once. Her lawn, normally trimmed to military precision, was starting to grow uneven patches of grass. That alone told me something was off. The queen of control was losing control. But I didn't celebrate yet. Because I knew people like her. They don't disappear, they regroup. And sure enough, by Thursday, a brand new HOA notice hit my mailbox. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, official looking, with a fancy HOA letterhead. The headline read, HOA Board demands immediate compliance, property dispute pending. I actually laughed out loud. This woman was trying to sue me for using my own land. I called my attorney friend, Mark. A guy who's seen more petty neighborhood lawsuits than I've had cups of coffee. He came over that evening with a box of files and a grin. Let me guess, he said. Your neighbor's a Karen with a clipboard? Worse, I told him. She runs a mini dictatorship called an HOA. We spent an hour going through documents. He flipped through the deed, property survey, county tax forms. Then leaned back in his chair. Well, he said, if she files anything, it's gonna backfire. Legally, you have more authority here than her entire board combined. That's when the idea hit me. Instead of waiting for Patty to make the next move, I'd make mine first. Revenge, but perfectly legal. The next morning, I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my coffee, and walked down to the HOA clubhouse. It was quiet, empty, except for one person inside, the HOA president, Mr. Crane. Older man, polite, clearly tired of Patty's antics. He looked up when I stepped in. Oh. Mr. Lawson. I heard there's been some tension. I smiled. Let's call it character development. He chuckled nervously. I placed a thick folder on his desk. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said. That Patty's been using HOA funds for personal stuff, landscaping, home repairs, even a new mailbox that the HOA paid for. He blinked. How did you? I shrugged. Public financial filings. You'd be surprised what's online if you know where to look. His jaw tightened. He opened the folder and went silent for a long minute. Then he said quietly, She's been warned before, but this. I nodded. She's not just breaking the rules. She's making them for herself. By Friday, the entire board knew. And by Saturday, Patty found out too. I was mowing my lawn when I heard her scream from across the street. You think you can ruin me? She stormed over, waving a piece of paper, probably her dismissal notice. You had no right to snoop through my business. I killed the mower and leaned on the handle. Neither did you when you called the cops over my lake, remember? Her face went red. You're evil. I grinned. No, Patty. I'm just better at following your rules than you are. She froze. Then spat out something I'll never forget. This neighborhood will hate you for this. I said quietly. They already hated me, Patty. Now they just know why. She stormed off again. But this time, there was no audience. No one defended her. No one followed her home. The power she had was gone. The following week, a letter arrived, not from the HOA, but from the county. It confirmed the reclassification of the lake boundary lines and granted exclusive usage rights to me as the property owner. Meaning, I officially owned the water that Patty used to claim as community property. I almost framed that letter. A few days later, I was sitting on the dock again. Sunlight glimmering off the water, Max snoozing at my feet. When a small group of neighbors walked over. At first, I braced for another argument. But one of them, the same guy who'd accused me weeks ago, raised a hand and said, "Hey, Jake, we just wanted to apologize. Patty kinda went too far." I smiled. "Yeah, she does that." He nodded toward the lake. "So, we still allowed to fish here?" I thought about it for a second. Then said, "As long as you bring beer and don't call the cops, sure." They laughed. For the first time since moving here, I actually felt like I belonged. But deep down, I knew Patty wasn't finished. People like her don't admit defeat. They look for new ways to twist the story. And she found one. 2 days later, a realtor sign appeared on her front yard. For sale, by owner. She was leaving. Or maybe running. I won't lie, a small part of me felt bad for her. Losing control, reputation, and power all at once must have stung. But then I remembered. She brought it all on herself. She created rules she couldn't live by. And tried to bully someone who actually read the fine print. So no. I didn't feel sorry for long. I just smiled, cast another line into my lake, and whispered to myself, "Guess it's mine again." If you caught your HOA bully using community money for their personal stuff, would you expose them or play dumb and watch them crash? Smirking face. Let me know what you'd do in the comments. Backhand index pointing down. When the for sale sign went up in Patty's yard, the neighborhood felt lighter. It was like someone turned the noise down for the first time in months. No more HOA notices. No late-night flashlights near the lake. No angry lectures about community standards. Just peace. But peace in an HOA neighborhood never lasts long. 2 weeks after Patty's house hit the market, a black pickup truck started showing up every evening. Different driver. Same spot, parked right at the edge of her driveway. At first, I thought maybe it was a potential buyer. But after a few nights, I noticed something odd. The guy never got out. Just sat there, engine running, window half down, like he was waiting for something. Max growled every time he saw the truck's headlights. I tried to ignore it. Until one night, around 11 p.m., I saw a flashlight moving behind Patty's house. I grabbed my phone and stepped outside quietly. The air was still, that heavy kind of quiet that makes your heart race. "Hello?" I called out. The light turned off instantly. For a few seconds, I saw nothing but the moon's reflection on the lake. Then, I heard the sound of a door slamming. And the truck sped off down the street. The next morning, curiosity got the best of me. I walked over to Patty's place. The curtains were gone. The front door slightly cracked open. "Patty?" I said out of habit. Silence. I peeked through the gap. The house looked half-packed, boxes everywhere. But what caught my attention was the stack of HOA files sitting on her kitchen counter. I know I shouldn't have stepped in, but I did. The top folder was labeled Lake Expansion Proposal, Confidential. I opened it. And my stomach dropped. Inside were blueprints, signatures, and a letter of intent. Apparently, Patty and 2 other HOA board members had been trying to sell lakefront parcels, including my section, to a private developer. They wanted to build luxury townhomes along the lake. And they'd been using HOA money to fund the planning process behind the scenes. That's why she'd been so obsessed with claiming my land. She wasn't protecting the lake. She was trying to own it before selling it. I took photos of every page on my phone. Every detail, every signature, every name. When I was done, I quietly closed the folder and stepped back out. That's when I saw movement from across the street. Someone was watching me. A shadow leaning against a lamppost, tall, still, arms crossed. I couldn't make out his face. But I recognized the truck parked beside him. Same black pickup. He stood there for a few seconds. Then got in and drove off. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I knew this story wasn't over. Patty might have been gone, but her mess was still very much alive. And I wasn't going to let it stay buried. The next morning, I printed the photos and sent copies to the county zoning office. I also emailed them to the current HOA president, Mr. Crane. Within 24 hours, he called me personally. "Jake, where did you find these?" "Patty's house," I said. "Looks like she was planning to sell the lake." He sighed heavily. "We suspected some financial misconduct, but this could be criminal." I said, "Then maybe it's time the HOA got a taste of its own rules." A week later, I got another call, this time from a county investigator. They'd opened an official audit into the Lakeview HOA's financial records. Apparently, the signatures Patty had used weren't all authorized. Some were forged. And one of the forged signatures belonged to a man who had passed away 2 years ago. The next few days were chaos. HOA board members started quitting left and right. Emails were leaked. And local news even showed up to cover the Lakeview HOA scandal. For once, I didn't have to do anything. The truth was doing all the work for me. I'd walk Max by the lake every morning and watch as the clubhouse lights stayed off. The place that once buzzed with gossip and fake power meetings was now locked up tight with a county investigation notice taped to the door. Karma had finally clocked in. A few days later, as I was sitting on the dock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone into that house." No name. Just that one sentence. I looked up, scanning the quiet lake and dark tree lanes. Nothing but the sound of crickets and rippling water. I didn't reply. Instead, I saved the number and forwarded it straight to the investigator. Because if Patty thought she could scare me from wherever she was hiding, she had no idea who she was messing with now. The lake shimmered under the fading sunset, and I couldn't help but smile. She tried to own the water. She tried to own the people. She even tried to own me. But in the end, her empire drowned in her own lies. If you found secret HOA documents in your neighbor's house proving corruption, would you expose them or use it quietly to your advantage? Smirking face. Tell me what you'd do in the comments. Backhand index pointing down. For a few weeks, everything felt calm again. The HOA investigation was ongoing. Patty was gone. And for the first time since moving in, I could sit by my lake without watching my back. But peace never lasts long in this neighborhood. Not when someone like Patty still has unfinished business. It started one Sunday morning. I walked outside with my coffee and saw something unbelievable. A construction crew parked right on the edge of my property. They had orange cones, measuring equipment, and were setting up survey markers near the lake. I called out, "Hey! What's going on here? One of them pointed toward my mailbox. New development permit, he said. We're just following the order. What order? I demanded. He shrugged. Says right here, approved by the HOA Redevelopment Committee. I froze. The HOA was suspended. There was no active committee. I walked over, grabbed the clipboard, and scanned the document. And there it was, the signature at the bottom. Patricia Langford. She'd signed it after she'd already sold her house. My blood went cold. She was gone, but somehow still pulling strings. I immediately called Mr. Crane. He sounded panicked. Jake, I swear to you, no such permit exists in our system. If she used HOA letterhead, it's forged. So she's still forging documents? I said. Yes, he replied. And if that's true, she's committing fraud. That afternoon, I went down to the HOA clubhouse, or what was left of it. The doors were locked, windows dark, and yellow county hold tape fluttered in the breeze. But behind the building, I noticed something strange. A small metal storage shed, padlocked tight. Fresh tire marks in the dirt. Someone had been there recently. I knelt down, pulled out my phone flashlight, and peeked under the gap. Inside were boxes of HOA records, old files, hard drives, receipts, things the investigators had supposedly already taken. Patty had hidden her own stash. That night, I emailed the county investigators everything, the fake permit, the hidden shed, the photos. They responded fast this time. Apparently, they'd been trying to locate missing documents for weeks. The next morning, a county vehicle pulled up outside my house. The agent who stepped out handed me a sealed envelope. Mr. Lawson, you may want to see this, he said. Inside was a printed letter recovered from Patty's personal HOA email. It was dated 3 days before she moved out. It read, "If they find out what we did with the developer funds, we're finished. I'm keeping the proof locked until I can negotiate. No one will touch that lake again, not even him." No one, meaning me. She'd planned everything, the permits, the forged papers, even the hidden shed, as leverage in case the board turned on her. And now, she was trying to use me as her distraction. That night, I noticed the black pickup truck again. Same spot. Same headlights. This time, I didn't stay inside. I grabbed my flashlight, phone camera on, and walked straight toward it. The window rolled down halfway. A familiar voice came through. "Still protecting your little lake, huh?" My heart skipped. It was her. Patty. "Didn't expect to see me again," she said, smiling like she'd already won. "Honestly," I said, "I thought you'd be in court by now." "Oh, you will," she said softly. "Once I show them you trespassed into my home and stole private HOA property." I took a step closer. "I didn't steal anything. I saved it. From you." She laughed, cold and sharp. "You think anyone's going to believe you? This neighborhood loves rules." And I wrote them. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Just the sound of the lake behind us, calm, silent, like it was listening. Then I said quietly, "You forgot one rule, Patty. The one you broke the most." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" "Never start a war with someone who has nothing left to lose." The next day, I met with the investigators again. They'd confirmed her fake permits, her hidden stash, and her forged documents. But they needed one last thing, proof she was still operating under the HOA's name. So, I did something bold. I invited Patty to meet me one last time. Publicly. At the lake. She showed up. Of course, she couldn't resist an audience. The whole street watched from their driveways as she strutted down in her perfect beige suit, clipboard in hand, pretending like she still ran the neighborhood. I was waiting on the dock, mic clipped to my shirt, a county investigator hidden nearby recording everything. "Patty," I said calmly, "do you really believe you can keep controlling this place?" She smiled. "Of course. HOA bylaws clearly state I have emergency authority in redevelopment cases." "Even after being removed from office?" I asked. She froze. "What are you talking about?" "Your resignation," I said. "Filed by the HOA president. Effective 3 months ago." Her face drained of color. "Which means," I continued, "every document you've signed since then is fraud." The investigator stepped out from behind a parked car. "Ma'am, we'll need to speak with you downtown." The neighbors gasped. Patty tried to speak, but words failed her. For the first time ever, she was speechless. As they led her away, I stood by the lake and watched the sunlight ripple across the water. It felt poetic. The same lake she tried to steal was now the place where her downfall began. I glanced at Max, who wagged his tail beside me. "Guess we can finally fish in peace," I whispered. But deep down, something told me it still wasn't over. Because people like Patty don't just vanish, they leave scars. And this neighborhood still had hers written all over it. If your corrupt HOA leader came back and threatened you again, would you face them head on, or let karma finish the job? Smirking face. Tell me what you'd do in the comments, backhand index pointing down. Weeks passed after Patty's arrest. The neighborhood was quiet again. Almost too quiet. No more fines taped to doors. No more HOA patrols. Just birds, sunlight, and the sound of the lake at sunrise. I thought it was finally over. But one morning, I found something strange floating near my dock. A small metal lockbox. Rusty. Half-sunk. With my address carved into the lid. I pulled it out, set it on the dock, and forced it open with a screwdriver. Inside were papers. Dozens of them, receipts and maps, even old letters from the developer who built this place. But one file stood out. It was labeled Lake Project, Private Access Agreement. As I started reading, my heart stopped. It said the lake wasn't just a shared community space like the HOA claimed. It was private land, deeded decades ago. To the original property owner. To my house. That meant every time Patty screamed that it was her lake. Every fine, every threat, every cop she called. She'd been trespassing on my property all along. I sent the file to the county office. They confirmed it within a day. The lake belonged to my land title. No HOA control. No shared access. No debate. It was legally mine. And they said something else. That box had been reported missing 10 years ago. Back when the first HOA president mysteriously retired after an audit. That night, I sat on my dock, staring at the reflection of the moon on the water. Max lay beside me. Peaceful. Tired. But even peace has a shadow. My phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through. Cold. Familiar. "You think it's over, don't you?" My chest tightened. Patty? You think you won because they locked me up, she said. But you don't understand. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed. From what? There was a pause on the line. Then she whispered, almost sweetly. From what's under that lake. I froze. Patty, what are you talking about? You'll see, she said. Check the west side of the lake at dawn. Then the line went dead. At first, I thought she was bluffing. Another one of her games. But the next morning, I went anyway. Curiosity beats fear every time. The west side of the lake was shallow, half mud, half water. Old reeds, stones, and forgotten junk along the edges. Then I saw it. A piece of metal sticking out from the mud. I waded in, pulled it free. It was another box, heavier, sealed shut with bolts. Inside. Old HOA financial ledgers. A flash drive. And one single envelope marked "Do not open the PL." I took it inside. Made coffee. And opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Jake. You'll hate me for what I did. But the truth is, the HOA didn't just collect dues. The lake was used as a dumping site for old documents and bribes tied to county permits. They hid everything under the water. I tried to stop them, but when I did, they made me the face of it all. I forged signatures, yes, but only to protect the originals. If you're reading this, the system is already cracking. Don't trust anyone who wants this lake developed. It's not just money buried here, it's evidence. My hands were shaking. It made sense now, the weird county interest, the fake redevelopment permits, the hidden shed. Patty wasn't just greedy. She was scared. And maybe she wasn't lying this time. I turned the flash drive over in my hand. Then plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of scanned documents appeared, emails, invoices, signatures from local officials. All tied to illegal HOA kickbacks for years of fake beautification projects. Patty might have been the villain of this story. But she wasn't the only one. I forwarded everything to the county investigator. He called me back within an hour. Mr. Lawson, he said quietly, you may have just blown open the biggest HOA corruption case in the state. A week later, a news van parked near the cul-de-sac. Reporters asking questions. Neighbors pretending they knew nothing. The entire HOA system of our neighborhood was under review. Property titles, fund records, everything. Patty's arrest had started the fire. But that flash drive. It burned down the whole forest. A month later, I got a letter from the county. All HOA operations permanently dissolved. All properties released from mandatory association dues. And at the bottom, lake ownership, private, Lawson Estate. It was done. I finally owned my peace. That evening, I sat by the lake again. The sunset painted the water gold. Max rested his head on my foot. For the first time in years, I felt free. I thought of Patty. Maybe she wasn't completely evil. Maybe she was just trapped in the same rotten system, trying to survive it in her own twisted way. As I stood to go back inside, I noticed something floating near the dock again. A small white envelope. No name. No stamp. I opened it. Inside was a single photo, an aerial shot of the lake. With one sentence written across the back. Some things are better left buried. The water rippled softly. like it was laughing. I smiled, shook my head, and whispered, "Guess we'll never be bored here again, huh, Max?" He barked once. The sound echoed across the quiet neighborhood. The lake shimmered. Peaceful. Silent. But never innocent. If you found secret evidence like this in your own neighborhood, would you turn it in or keep it hidden to protect your peace? Eyes. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Speech balloon.